The auditorium was buzzing with quiet excitement, a tension that felt almost tangible in the air. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on the stage, waiting for Apostle Joshua Selman to deliver a message that many knew would be life-changing. His presence was magnetic, calm, composed, and utterly focused. The way he stood, hands lightly resting on the podium, exuded authority without arrogance. People leaned forward in their seats, anticipating every word, every pause, every subtle gesture. But there was something different that night. A special guest had been invited, none other than Chuck Norris. The audience knew him not just as a legendary actor and martial artist, but as a figure whose life had been shaped by discipline, faith, and remarkable experiences. No one expected him to speak, but his mere presence added an unusual layer of curiosity to the event. As Selman spoke, delivering his usual insightful and uplifting message, Chuck Norris watched quietly from the front row. There was a calm intensity in his gaze, a quiet assurance that something important was about to happen. And then it did. In a moment so subtle that many in the audience almost missed it, Chuck leaned in slightly and whispered something to Selman. Instantly, the energy in the room shifted. People glanced at each other with wide eyes, sensing that something meaningful had just been exchanged. Cameras clicked as if the audience instinctively knew this was a moment worth capturing. Whispers spread like wildfire, a mix of curiosity, excitement, and anticipation. Everyone leaned forward, straining to understand what had passed between the two men. Selman paused, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. The silence was remarkable, not uncomfortable, but heavy with anticipation. The audience was holding its collective breath, waiting to see how he would respond. The stage lights seemed brighter, every detail sharper, the calm determination in Selman's eyes, the quiet focus of Chuck Norris, and the ripple of curiosity spreading across the room like a gentle wave. It was a moment that felt larger than life, yet deeply human. No dramatic collapse, no chaos, no shouting, just a quiet, powerful exchange between two remarkable men, witnessed by hundreds. And as the audience sat there, fully absorbed, a sense of awe began to settle over the hall. Everyone knew that what happened next would be remembered long after the event, not for spectacle, but for the insight and wisdom that was about to unfold. The atmosphere in the auditorium was electric, yet calm, a rare combination that made every heartbeat feel louder than usual. Hundreds of attendees filled the seats, ranging from young students to older adults, all drawn by the reputation of Apostle Joshua Selman. They had come not just to listen, but to experience the depth of his teachings, to feel inspired, and to witness the subtle power of a man whose words could stir hearts without raising his voice. Selman stood on the stage, a figure of calm authority. His posture was relaxed but confident, shoulders squared, eyes scanning the audience with warmth and focus. Every detail of his presence seemed intentional, from the way his hands rested gently on the podium to the deliberate pauses he used while speaking. Even before uttering a single word, he had the full attention of everyone in the hall. The energy of the crowd mirrored his own calm yet powerful aura, creating a rare and almost tangible connection between speaker and listeners. That night was special not just because of Selman, but because of the unexpected guest who had been invited, Chuck Norris. Known around the world for his legendary martial arts career and acting, Chuck's life was also widely recognized for its spiritual depth and personal discipline. While he rarely appeared in such settings, his presence here was unassuming yet commanding. Seated near the front, he watched with quiet focus, his eyes calm but attentive. It was clear to everyone that he was not here for publicity, but to genuinely engage with the event and the message being delivered. The stage itself was elegantly simple. Warm lighting highlighted Selman, casting soft shadows that added depth to the scene without overwhelming it. A modest backdrop displayed the event's theme, while the polished wooden floor reflected the light subtly. Microphones and cameras were positioned strategically, capturing every angle for live streaming and future broadcasts, but they were unobtrusive, blending into the scene without drawing attention away from the speaker. As Selman began to speak, his voice carried effortlessly through the hall, firm yet gentle, like a calm river flowing steadily. His words were precise, carefully chosen, yet delivered with the ease of someone speaking from experience rather than rehearsal. The audience hung on each phrase, nodding in agreement, smiling at familiar insights, and occasionally murmuring softly to one another in appreciation. Every sentence built on the last, creating a rhythm that drew everyone deeper into the moment. Meanwhile, Chuck Norris remained quietly observant. Occasionally, he would nod, subtly acknowledging points that resonated with him. There was a sense that he was following Selman's message carefully, not as a celebrity guest performing a role, but as a participant absorbing truth and meaning. His calm presence added an almost imperceptible weight to the room, a sense that something meaningful was about to occur, even if no one could yet articulate exactly what. The audience, sensing the significance of the gathering, was fully attentive. Phones were raised intermittently to capture key moments, but most people were simply watching and listening, fully present. The hum of whispered anticipation was almost a physical thing, a subtle vibration that made the air feel alive. Everyone, from the front row to the back, seemed to instinctively understand that this was more than a regular event. There was an unspoken expectation that something extraordinary, yet profoundly simple, would unfold in the moments ahead. Even the smallest details contributed to the charged atmosphere. The gentle rustle of program sheets, the occasional clearing of throats, the soft click of cameras, and the ambient sound of the crowd shifting in their seats. Together, these small, ordinary noises amplified the sense of expectancy, a quiet tension that felt respectful, curious, and entirely human. It was the perfect setup for what would become a remarkable exchange, not one of spectacle or drama, but of subtle insight, shared wisdom, and quiet power. The stage was set, the characters were in place, and the audience, fully engaged, waited for the moment that would make this evening unforgettable. As Apostle Joshua Selman spoke, the rhythm of his words drew the audience deeper into reflection. Every sentence was deliberate, yet fluid, like a gentle current guiding everyone's attention toward a higher understanding. The hall seemed to lean in with him. Every person, from the front row to the very back, was fully absorbed in his message. Then, without any fanfare, Chuck Norris leaned slightly toward Selman and whispered something just quiet enough for Selman to hear. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to those not watching closely, but immediately, the energy in the room shifted. The audience sensed that something important had just occurred, though no one could yet tell exactly what. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd like soft waves. People exchanged glances, a mix of curiosity and anticipation evident on every face. Selman paused, his gaze fixed on some invisible point beyond the stage. His expression shifted, thoughtful, reflective, almost as if he were weighing something deeply within himself. The microphone in front of him remained quiet, yet the silence in the hall was far from empty. It was thick with expectancy, a tension that demanded attention without force. Every eye followed his every move. Every subtle gesture became a sign, a clue to what might happen next. The audience noticed the slight change in Selman's posture. His hands, which had been relaxed on the podium, subtly tightened before loosening again. A small, almost imperceptible smile crossed his face, one that hinted at understanding but revealed nothing. Cameras continued to click, but most attendees were too captivated to care about capturing the moment. They were fully present, sensing that something meaningful was unfolding between the two men. Chuck Norris remained composed, his calm demeanor a striking contrast to the ripple of energy moving through the crowd. His eyes held a quiet intensity, suggesting a depth of knowledge and insight, and a shared understanding with Selman that no one else could yet perceive. It was a connection forged in subtlety, not loud, not flashy, but profoundly powerful in its quietness. Every person in the hall instinctively leaned forward, their curiosity growing with each passing second. The tension was not born of fear, danger, or drama, but of wonder, the kind that comes when something extraordinary is about to be revealed, yet everyone must wait patiently. There was a collective realization that whatever Selman was about to say would carry weight, insight, and perhaps even a small revelation. Even the minor sounds of the room amplified the feeling of expectancy. The soft shuffle of feet, the gentle tapping of fingers on seats, and the low murmur of whispering friends created a backdrop that made the silence feel alive. It was a tension of curiosity, not chaos, anticipation, not alarm. Then came another subtle moment. Selman glanced briefly at Chuck Norris, and the faint nod that passed between them was almost imperceptible. Yet for those paying attention, it was a signal, a bridge between the message just received and the insight about to be shared. The audience leaned in even more, holding their breath, waiting for the words that would make sense of this quietly powerful exchange. It was a rare kind of tension, one that didn't need dramatics or spectacle. It was the tension of meaning, the suspense of insight, and the anticipation of wisdom being passed in a way that could only be appreciated by those who were paying attention. Everyone in that room, knowingly or unknowingly, was part of something bigger than themselves, a moment of connection, understanding, and shared curiosity. The moment Selman paused, a hush fell over the auditorium. It wasn't the kind of silence that feels empty or uncomfortable. Rather, it was a quiet anticipation, thick with respect and curiosity. Hundreds of eyes remained fixed on the stage, watching his every movement, every subtle shift of expression. Every single person seemed to intuitively know that something meaningful was unfolding, something that could not be rushed, yet demanded full attention. Selman's gaze wandered across the audience as if measuring the readiness of the room. The thoughtful pause stretched just enough to make hearts beat a little faster, not with fear, but with curiosity. There was a sense that the words to come would carry weight, not in drama, but in wisdom. His face remained calm, yet the slight furrowing of his brow hinted at deep reflection. It was the kind of expression that invited others to pause and reflect as well. The audience reacted instinctively. Some leaned forward in their seats, elbows on knees, hands clasped, waiting. Others whispered softly to those nearby, exchanging speculative glances about what had just passed between Selman and Chuck Norris. The whispers were respectful, tinged with admiration rather than chaos. Cameras clicked intermittently, but even the photographers seemed aware that this was not about capturing a dramatic moment, it was about witnessing subtle brilliance unfold. Children in the audience tilted their heads, sensing that something unusual was happening, even if they didn't fully understand. Adults nodded quietly to themselves, recognizing the gravity of the exchange and the rarity of the moment. There was no shouting, no gasps, no dramatic reactions. Just attentive, present human beings fully immersed in the subtle power of what was occurring on stage. Selman's pause became more intentional. He took a slow, measured breath, as if absorbing the weight of the message he had just received. His eyes flicked briefly toward Chuck Norris, who remained composed, offering only a calm, almost imperceptible nod. The exchange was wordless but profound, a silent communication between two men whose lives had been shaped by discipline, faith, and experience. The audience sensed it instinctively, as though they were witnessing a quiet but powerful form of leadership in action. Even the smallest reactions were amplified in that moment. A subtle smile from Selman, a nod from someone in the front row, the gentle rustle of program papers, all contributed to a shared sense of anticipation and reverence. The room seemed to breathe collectively, every attendee acutely aware that this was no ordinary gathering. Each person felt connected not just to Selman, but to the message, to the moment, and to the unspoken understanding shared between the speaker and the guest. It was remarkable how tension and awe could coexist without any theatrics. The audience wasn't holding its breath out of fear or shock. It was a breath held in wonder, in anticipation of insight. The sense of unity was almost tangible, hundreds of individuals collectively sensing the importance of what was about to be revealed. In that calm silence, there was a quiet celebration of understanding, an appreciation for wisdom delivered without spectacle. As Selman finally prepared to speak again, the audience seemed to lean in instinctively, as if drawn by gravity toward the words that were about to be spoken. Their faces reflected curiosity, respect, and deep engagement. Every person in the hall felt the weight of the moment, not as a drama, but as a profound lesson in attentiveness, patience, and the quiet power of meaningful exchange. It was a reaction that would be remembered long after the event, not because of shock or chaos, but because the audience had experienced a rare, almost sacred pause in time, where presence and insight became more powerful than any spectacle could ever be. After the pause that had seemed to stretch on forever, Apostle Joshua Selman straightened slightly and took a deliberate, measured breath. His eyes scanned the auditorium one last time, connecting with the hundreds of attendees who had leaned in, quietly anticipating his words. The tension that had filled the room subtly shifted. Curiosity began to blend with anticipation, a calm excitement spreading through every corner of the hall. Then, with his usual calm authority, Selman began to speak. His voice was steady, yet carried a weight that made every word feel intentional and meaningful. "What was just shared with me," he said, "is not a message of spectacle, but a reminder of purpose, humility, and faith." The crowd leaned in, fully attentive. There was no shouting or dramatic flourish, only a quiet power in his tone, one that demanded focus through clarity rather than theatrics. He paused again, allowing the words to settle over the audience. "We often look for signs in grand displays or extraordinary events," Selman continued, "but sometimes the most profound guidance comes quietly, almost imperceptibly. It comes as a gentle nudge, a whisper of understanding, or a reminder of the path we've been called to walk." Heads nodded across the room. People whispered softly to those beside them, acknowledging the truth in his words. The subtle twist in the moment became clear. The message Chuck Norris had shared with Selman wasn't a revelation in the sense of breaking news or dramatic prophecy. It was a reminder of values often overlooked: patience, discernment, and a steadfast heart. Selman explained, "The wisdom shared tonight shows that true power is not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It guides, it teaches, and it inspires quietly. That is where transformation begins." Audience members absorbed each word, visibly reflecting on their own lives. Some closed their eyes, allowing the meaning to resonate deeply within. Others leaned forward, absorbing every syllable, clearly touched by the gentle power of the insight. Even Chuck Norris, who had witnessed many public events in his life, seemed quietly moved by the delivery. A small, appreciative nod that spoke volumes. Selman continued, weaving the lesson into the context of everyday life. In our moments of challenge, when we feel uncertain or overwhelmed, it is often these quiet truths, shared through a whisper, a pause, or a moment of reflection, that guide us. And when we listen carefully, we find clarity, courage, and purpose in ways that spectacle never provides. The crowd was silent, yet the energy in the room had shifted. It was a reverent silence, filled with comprehension and reflection. Finally, Selman concluded the reveal. This moment reminds us that insight does not always arrive with drama. Sometimes, it comes quietly, from unexpected sources, and leaves a lasting impact far greater than any moment of noise or distraction could. Let us learn to value those gentle nudges, the quiet confirmations, and the subtle guidance that points us toward our calling. The audience reacted softly, with a mix of awe and understanding. Some whispered to neighbors, others nodded in agreement, and a few smiled knowingly, touched by the profound simplicity of the revelation. Cameras captured the moment, but it was the inner transformation, the personal resonance, and the shared experience of reflection that truly mattered. It was a twist in the story not of shock, but of wisdom, a subtle yet powerful lesson that emphasized humility, attentiveness, and the enduring impact of quiet insight. The moment would linger long after the lights dimmed, as each person carried with them the weight of what had been shared. That true guidance often speaks softly, but its influence echoes endlessly. The room remained quiet for a few moments after Apostle Joshua Selman's words had settled in. It was a silence that spoke volumes, not of suspense, but of reflection. Every person in the auditorium seemed to carry the weight of what had just been shared. It was not a moment of shock or spectacle, but a moment of realization. The true power of wisdom often arrives quietly, almost imperceptibly, yet leaves an enduring impression. Selman's calm presence and measured words had done more than deliver a message. They had guided the audience into a shared experience of introspection. People began to internalize the lesson, considering their own lives, their choices, and the moments when quiet guidance had nudged them in the right direction. Some remembered the small, almost unnoticed moments that had led to significant change in their lives. Others thought about the times they had overlooked subtle signs, focusing instead on dramatic or noisy distractions. Chuck Norris, seated near the front, remained a silent witness to this unfolding reflection. His composed demeanor reinforced the lesson being imparted. Influence is not measured by display or recognition, but by the quiet consistency of values, humility, and thoughtful action. The subtle exchange between him and Selman had reminded the audience of this truth, and it became clear that real power, the kind that inspires and transforms, does not demand attention, it earns it through quiet integrity. Selman spoke again, emphasizing the importance of patience and attentiveness in everyday life. Often, he said, we rush to find answers in dramatic gestures, big events, or the applause of the crowd. Yet the most important guidance comes softly, through reflection, careful listening, and small, deliberate choices. Those who pay attention to these gentle nudges find clarity, purpose, and strength far beyond what spectacle can provide. The audience absorbed the message, reflecting on the implications. There was a sense of collective understanding, a shared realization that wisdom and insight are often overlooked because they do not announce themselves loudly. Each person felt encouraged to look for the subtle lessons in their own lives, to recognize moments of guidance that might otherwise pass unnoticed. It was an empowering realization that influence and growth often come quietly, without fanfare, yet with lasting impact. Selman continued, highlighting the value of humility and respect. True leaders, he said, are not those who demand attention or create noise. They are those who listen, who guide with integrity, and who inspire quietly. It is in these moments, seemingly ordinary, often overlooked, that the greatest transformations occur. The audience nodded, some whispering to neighbors, others reflecting silently. Everyone seemed to recognize that the lesson applied not just to leadership, but to life itself. The room gradually exhaled, a shared sense of calm washing over the attendees. It was as if the moment had given them permission to slow down, to pause, and to consider the quiet but significant ways in which life teaches and guides. The tension that had filled the hall earlier had transformed into clarity and understanding, leaving everyone with a sense of purpose and reflection. By the time the session drew to a close, the takeaway was unmistakable. Wisdom and influence are not always loud or dramatic. They are often gentle, subtle, and quiet, but when recognized and embraced, they leave an indelible impact. The audience left the auditorium inspired, thoughtful, and ready to notice the small, meaningful lessons that life offers every day. It was a lesson in patience, attentiveness, and humility, one that would resonate far beyond the walls of that hall. As the lights in the auditorium dimmed, a soft murmur of conversation filled the space. The event had officially ended, yet it was clear to everyone present that the impact of the evening was far from over. People were leaving slowly, reluctant to break the sense of connection that had been created. The quiet power of Apostle Joshua Selman's message lingered, like a gentle echo that continued to resonate long after the last word had been spoken. Attendees whispered to one another, reflecting on what they had witnessed. Many spoke about the subtle exchange between Selman and Chuck Norris, not as a spectacle, but as a lesson in attentiveness, humility, and the quiet impact of insight. Some mentioned how easy it was to overlook the small, meaningful moments in life, focusing instead on dramatic gestures and external validation. Yet tonight had reminded them that guidance often arrives softly, almost imperceptibly, and that the most transformative lessons are often those we notice only if we are truly present. Even outside the auditorium, the conversation continued. Groups gathered in lobbies and hallways, discussing the messages that had resonated most. Phones captured the moment, yes, but it was not for social media likes or shares. It was to preserve something far more personal, the feeling of having been part of something profound. Many attendees described a sense of clarity, as though a quiet nudge had guided them to reflect on their own paths, their choices, and the subtle lessons they had previously overlooked. For those watching the live stream, the engagement was equally powerful. Comments flowed in real time, viewers expressing gratitude for the thoughtful, calm delivery of the message. Many noted how unusual it was to witness such a subtle yet meaningful interaction on stage, a reminder that wisdom does not always announce itself with loud gestures or dramatic acts. It was a lesson that transcended the event itself, applying directly to the daily lives of anyone willing to pause and observe. Apostle Joshua Selman, as he prepared to leave the stage, took a final moment to address the crowd. His voice was soft but deliberate, emphasizing reflection and mindfulness. "Remember," he said, "the most significant lessons often come quietly. They do not demand attention, but they reward those who listen. The moments that shape us are often small, subtle, and easy to overlook, yet their impact lasts a lifetime." There were nods of agreement throughout the audience, a quiet affirmation that the message had landed deeply. Even Chuck Norris, who had been largely silent, offered a final nod of acknowledgement. His presence had been understated throughout the evening, yet it added a layer of depth to the experience. The exchange between him and Selman reminded everyone that influence is not about spectacle. It is about authenticity, attentiveness, and integrity. It was a reminder that guidance and mentorship can arrive from unexpected sources, and that the quiet voices in our lives often carry the most profound lessons. As viewers, both in the hall and online, reflected on the experience, the engagement naturally extended beyond the event itself. The takeaway was clear. Wisdom is not measured by drama, applause, or spectacle. It is measured by its impact, on thought, on behavior, and on the lives it touches. This was a call to mindfulness, to slowing down, and to noticing the gentle nudges that life provides. It was a reminder to value the quiet lessons, the moments of clarity, and the subtle guidance that can shape a lifetime. To everyone watching this video, take a moment to reflect. What was the most meaningful part of this story for you? Was it the way Selman responded, the calm presence of Chuck Norris, or the subtle lesson about attentiveness and humility? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your reflection could inspire someone else to notice the quiet moments in their own life. And if you feel that wisdom and insight matter more than spectacle, type wisdom in the comments below. Let's celebrate the power of subtle guidance, of quiet influence, and of the lessons that arrive softly but endure forever. Remember, the world is full of moments that can change us, even if we don't realize it at first. Sometimes, all it takes is one quiet exchange, one thoughtful word, or one gentle nudge to shift our perspective, and that is exactly what happened in this unforgettable evening. So pause, reflect, and engage. Think about the lessons, the insight, and the wisdom shared. And as you go about your day, remember that true influence is quiet, guidance can be subtle, and the most important moments are often the ones we notice only when we are fully present.